All right, welcome to video 2 in the Pro Tools Bootcamp video series. This is recording audio. We're going to look at how you record audio, the different recording modes, using playlists to your advantage, and the region bin and how we can import audio as well from outside the session. Right now, I'm going to do basic recording with a guitar, but these principles apply whether you are in your bedroom recording on your own or you are running a studio and you're engineering another person's session. It's the same principles, and that's what I love about Pro Tools. It's very robust, but it's universal, and we can all speak the same language once you learn it. So let's start out with what I've got. I've got my blank track here. It's labeled guitar. I want to make sure I've got the right input. Input 1 is where I've got my guitar plugged in, so we're good to go. Analog 1 and 2 is where my speakers or headphones are plugged into so I can hear it. And so then I'm going to simply record enable the track, and I should be able to hear a guitar. Now I'm going to be playing through a guitar amp simulator to kind of get that tone that I want instead of miking an actual guitar amp. So I'm going to come up to the first insert, and again, if you don't see it, make sure that insert is checked on the drop-down menu here. Choose the first open insert spot, choose plug-in harmonic, and I'm going to use 11 free. This is a great amp simulator plugin. It comes free with any Pro Tools 8 system. Now you can kind of hear that annoying hum. That's my single coil pickup from a Telecaster for you. And there's a great threshold feature in 11. If you just crank that up, it's going to pretty much mute the guitar unless I'm playing through it. So that's great. So I'm going to dial that back, and then I'm going to just sort of choose a different preset. Maybe crunch, modern low gain. Maybe greenback cabinet. There we go. We're good to go. I like it. So I'm going to close out. And at this point, I'm pretty much ready to go. I'm going to press enter to make sure the play cursor is at the very beginning of my session. I'm going to press record and let the click go for about 4 beats just to give me some blank space at the session. I like to have that at the beginning to play around with. And so I'm going to just hit Command or Control Spacebar, and we're away. And recording audio couldn't be any easier. There's my waveform, and in actuality, that's just the direct signal that you're hearing in my case. So if I bypass the plugin, either by choosing bypass up here, or by command or control clicking the actual plugin, then I can just listen to the dry guitar part. All right, command or control click the plugin and it's back. All right. Now, if you find that you're hearing that click playing when you press play and that annoys you perhaps, maybe you don't want that to be playing when I'm just listening back to the audio, you can simply change that setting. That's what I like to do. I go to the transport, so Command or Control 1, and then over here near count off, you double click, and there's an option to click only during record. That's exactly what we want to do. So it will click when you're recording, when you need to hear it, but when you're just playing back, you won't have to listen to the click. All right? Choose OK, and you're golden. Beautiful. Command or Control 1 to hide the transport. Now at this point, if you nailed the take, you could play through the entire song and you'd be done. And that's all it takes to record in Pro Tools. But what I want you to see is how to punch in, because that's more realistic. Sometimes you just want to try a part again or just record one part differently, and you don't need to re-record the entire thing, of course. So Pro Tools lets you do that very simply. Now, if you just came over here and pressed record to record over this section, let's say, you wouldn't have time to grab your guitar and play it. So what I need to do is use pre-roll to my advantage. So let me find where I want to punch in. I want to punch in right there in the middle. So what I'm going to do is bring up the transport, and I'm going to use what's called pre-roll. Pre-roll is a holdover term from the days of tape when they recorded to reel-to-reel tape, and you'd roll the tape back a few bars or 4 bars or whatever, so you would hear a little bit of the song right before you need it to come in. That's all pre-roll means. So over here, you want to just enter, 1 bar, 2 bars, 12 bars, whatever you want. I'm going to do 1 bar, press enter, and that activates pre-roll. You can always uncheck pre-roll. And pre-roll lets you do exactly what it sounds like. It's going to roll 1 bar, in this case, before where I've got it selected. So if I press play, it's not going to actually play from here. It's going to jump back a bar. Make sense? Now you can imagine this is helpful when you are recording. So I can click here, I can choose 2 bars, and then I can press record, and it's going to punch in right on measure 4, but it gives me a couple bars to get ready. So let's give it a whirl. Let's press Command or Control Spacebar. All right, pretty simple. So now I've got 2 separate regions. The first one, which you can always drag back, it's still there. And then the second one, which started right there on measure 4. Now, if you were doing this on your own and for some reason when you pressed record and it was playing back these few bars, if you don't hear this audio, there's a good chance you're in input-only monitoring mode. And there's 2 modes in Pro Tools LE and Empower that affect that, and you get that from the track menu. Now, what it's going to show you is either input only here or auto input, and whatever one it shows you is which one you don't currently have it on. It's kind of confusing, but it makes sense. If I want to be an input only, I select it. Now, if I press play, you don't hear anything. You're only going to hear the input. I'm just playing along. It only monitors your input, and that's helpful if you want to press play, but on this track you just want to hear what you're doodling with. It's good for practicing. That's the way I look at it. Input only mode is great for when you're practicing, but when you're ready to record, typically make sure you're in auto input. That's gonna always play what's currently there, and when you're recording something new, you're gonna hear your input. So it's the perfect automatic blend of the 2. Gotta love it. Now, another way to punch in is using quick punch mode, okay? Quick punch mode is helpful, especially when you're engineering somebody else, because you have more flexibility of instantly, quickly punching in the moment you want to. Let me show you what I mean. Let me undo that punch. And to undo, the key command is simply Command or Control Z. But I'm going to give you a tip. If you're going to really be a Pro Tools power user, I want you to use the keyboard focus command. And that's this little button over here, A to Z. If it's unchecked, then your regular keyboard shortcuts are going to work. In that case, Command Z or Control Z will undo. But if you have this clicked, and it'll stay this way as you work in Pro Tools forever, pretty much, unless you change it. Now I can just use 1-letter keyboard shortcuts. For instance, Z will just undo instead of Command Z. And that's very, very helpful. And you'll see me use more of these single-letter keyboard shortcuts in the future. And if they're not working for you, it's probably because you don't have this checked. So just a heads up, I'm going to probably be showing you some of those moving forward in the video series. So I've undone what I needed to do, and I've just got my original take here. I want to punch in the same place, but instead I want to use quick punch mode. So to change the mode, you come up to the record button up top or in the transport, either one, right click, and come down here to quick punch. The letter P is going to show up within the red recording button. And what quick punch lets you do is I can back up wherever I want, press play, and then while it's playing, I can simply hit record or Command Spacebar in the middle of Pro Tools playing, and it'll start recording that very instant I press record. So it gives me freedom to punch in whenever I want to instead of having to be a predefined moment. Now, in essence, I'm creating my own pre-roll. Does that make sense? So I would take off pre-roll, I would select where I want to press play, but I'm only going to want to record right around here. So let me give it a whirl. Now, obviously, I had to switch from pressing record to jumping to the guitar so you could sort of see me flubbing to get in, but I really only needed that end part. So I'm going to just drag this back. So now I've got... So I basically punched in the same ba 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 like I did with pre-roll punching in, and that's just using Quick Punch. And the beauty of Quick Punch is, and this is where it really shines, is technically Pro Tools is recording in the background the moment you press play. Not record, but the moment you press play. So instead of when I punched in right around here, this is where I pressed record, obviously it started recording then, but it was actually recording back here. I can drag it all the way back. That's as far as I can drag it because that's where I pressed play. So the region really is capturing everything from the moment you press play, and it's sort of a fail-safe. Again, so if I had this great lick while I was jamming along, but you really meant to just record here, you could say, you know what, you did a better job back here. Let's drag it back and use that. So it's very, very helpful, but I'm going to use that part of that take and that part of that take. And that is how you use punching in Pro Tools. And you can run wild with this. You can punch in as much or as little as you want to, but it is available to you. Now, if you've been noticing, when I recorded the first take, the whole take here, Guitar 07, it showed up right up here in my Regions bin, okay? Now, these two things, the word Guitar 07 here and this region Guitar 07 here, are one and the same. If I delete it by pressing backspace, it's gone in my session, right? When I press play, it's not there. But this did not disappear because the actual region hasn't gone anywhere. It's on your hard drive. It's never gone. And the region bin shows you the audio and MIDI in your session on your hard drive, okay? So all I can do is click and drag it back into the session. There it is, Guitar 07. It's there all the time. It's the same with Guitar 08. I can click and drag that back where I started right at bar 2. And then, of course, I can drag that over, and there's my same edit that I had before. Couldn't be easier. And this is important for you to understand the way Pro Tools handles audio. Anytime you record, it shows up as a take here. That way, no matter how much you cut this up, destroy it, fade it, record over it, delete it, your original takes are all going to stay here as they boom, 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 boom. The more you record, they're going to pile up, but they're never going anywhere. And you can always find them. And that's why in the first video, I wanted you to label your track something like guitar, because now when I look back, I'm going to see all these takes. I'm going to know these are obviously guitar takes, okay? Very, very helpful. Now, one thing that's cool about these things is that if you've deleted them, let's say, and you don't really know what take is what, you can audition them in the region bin. And let me show you how. You come over here, simply hold Option or Alt, and a little speaker, the mouse turns into a speaker, and while you're holding that button, you just click. See what I'm saying? You're hearing that audio piece playing. So you go, oh, that's the main riff. So you can click and drag it in. Very, very cool. Now I'm going to give you a power tip right here because I know it's a little bit early, but this is what I want you guys to know. In our situation, this is very easy. If I deleted it and I figured out that that was the track I wanted, you may be asking, well, how do you know where to drag it into the session? Obviously, in our situation, it's really easy. I drag it to the beginning of the session because that's where I press record. But what if I started recording right here and everything needs to line up? What if you've recorded drums and vocals and keys and that guitar part wasn't started at the beginning of the session? You can bring it back into the session, but it's not going to be lined up with where it needed to be. This is the beauty of what Pro Tools does. Anytime you record something, Pro Tools puts a timestamp on it. And what do I mean by timestamp? I mean it records on that actual region, and it's invisible, where in your session you pressed record. Now, they do this a lot of times for when you're mixing to picture, to video. You can spot audio exactly where you want it to be. So everything has to have a timestamp, but this is very helpful for us if you forget where an audio region was. Now, obviously, this one's very easy, but Guitar 08 technically didn't start at the beginning of the session. It started technically at bar 2, if you remember. That's where I pressed play. But let's say we don't remember that. What you want to do is flip over to spot mode. Okay? Grab the audio region, click and drag it anywhere. But when you let go, it's going to bring up what they call the spot dialog. They're going to say, okay, where do you want to drag this? Well, there it is. My original timestamp for this audio region was bar 2, beat 1. Remember? Absolutely right. Now, if this was bar 2, beat 1, 0.77835, it would know exactly where the timestamp was. It's accurate. So what you want to do, instead of putting it there where I dragged it, click this arrow, and it moves the timestamp up to where you want its start point to be, and click OK. Snaps it right to where it was actually recorded. Now, I hope you can see how this will be helpful when you have a complex recording in the future. If you ever delete something by accident and you can't seem to drag it in and line it up perfectly, or you're like me and you're anal retentive and you want it to be exactly where you recorded it and not just where you fudge it, go into spot mode, drag it into your session from the region bin, let go, and then click that arrow next to original timestamp, click OK, boom, you're golden. All right? Perfect. I'm going to undo that with the letter Z, go back into the grid mode, and that is basic recording. I'm going to drag this back, and I'm going to drag this back as well, and fix my edit. And we're back ready to go. That is basically recording. Now here's something you'll probably want to do also. Again, this is very elementary, but when you've got a take done, you can always double it, let's say. So let's do this all over again. Let's create a new track. Shift Command in. I'm going to keep it the same type of track, mono audio. Click Create. I'm going to get rid of my transport. And I'm going to name this Guitar 2, because I want it to be a double of this guitar part. I'm going to make sure its input is set to where my guitar is still plugged in, which is 1, not 2. I'm going to unrecord enable that track, record enable this track, but again, I've just got that dry guitar. So what I'm going to do, I want to open up 11 on this track as well, but instead of going through and finding it again, why don't you just come up here and Option or Alt click and drag, and it will drag a copy of the exact same setting. It's that same modern low gain with the 25-watt greenback cab. Perfect. So it's going to be identical. So let me just click the volume down a bit on my first track, pan it a little bit to the left. I'm going to come down here and press Enter to come to the beginning of my session. I'm going to play the exact same thing. All right, perfect. So now we can take a listen to these guys. Unrecord enable, bring that back up. Option or Alt click brings volume back to 0. Pan this about equal. Take a listen. Not half bad. That is recording basic audio in Pro Tools. You can see Guitar 201 showed up here. That's the same thing. And you can do this all day, every day with any kind of track that you want. All right? Now what I want to show you is playlists. And this is very, very helpful. So let's get into normal record mode. Right click, choose normal. Playlists are virtual tracks that are stacked underneath the track that you see. So for instance, let's say I've got a slightly different way I want to play this guitar riff, and I'm not quite sure which way is going to work best in the end. I want to record another take, but I want to keep this take. So let's come to this arrow on Guitar 2 and choose New. This is the playlist menu. And it says Name for New Playlist. Now Pro Tools by default does this kind of thing. So if my track is called Guitar 2, then the first playlist will be called Guitar 2.01. You can rename it if it's something that's more meaningful to you. In this case, let's just do Guitar 2 Alt for alternate. Click OK. It gives me a brand new track. It's named the track Guitar 2 Alt, but I haven't lost that original track. If I click the arrow, it's still there, guitar 2. And there's even numbers next to it. It's my first playlist. This is my second playlist, and it's blank. So let's mute the first track because I'm going to play a slightly different rhythm. Come back to the beginning. Let's put this back in the center. Option click. Let's record enable. Let's press record. There you go. So now you've got the slightly different pattern here with or. So you can record subtle variations. You can record other takes if you think you could do a better job. This is very helpful for vocals or lead guitar, of course, where you can record multiple takes. And then as you see in the editing video, we'll be able to comp those together. But playlists are very, very helpful. And again, you access them from this arrow right here to the right of the track. And you can do as many of these as you want. You can even duplicate a playlist. So it'll basically create a copy of it on another playlist. So if you just wanted to punch in on a copy, instead of physically copying yourself, you can duplicate. You can switch back between all day long, name them whatever you like. All right? What we're going to look at a little bit later is playlist view, which you come over here and choose waveform playlist, and then you can sort of see both my takes right there, guitar 2 alt, and you can sort of see them visually, and this is where we're going to be able to edit them with better detail. But for now, let's stick in waveform view. Now what we're going to do is import some audio into this session to kind of go along with what I just recorded here. So let's unrecord enable. Let's bring this back, pan it. And what I want to do is bring in a drum loop, okay? Now I've got some loops on my hard drive, and if you've got loops anywhere on your session, you can do this with any loop at any point, or any audio for that matter. It doesn't have to be a drum loop. And there's a couple different ways to get audio into your session. Let's start out with auditioning audio with a Workspace browser so you can at least hear the loop before you bring it into Pro Tools, and then I'll show you a few different ways to bring in audio. Go up to Window and choose Workspace. The Workspace window is a relatively simple window, but what it shows you is any hard drive connected to your computer. I've got my main drive, and then here I've got an external hard drive, and I'm going to arrow down, and I can see Big Fish loops here. And I'm going to choose pop rock, drums, let's say, and I'm going to take a look at some drum loops that are in and around my tempo, which is 120. And what you've got is every audio file. These are just WAV files, and you've got a speaker icon next to them. And what you can do is audition them. You can click, and it'll stop. And once you've played it once, it obviously generates a waveform here. Now what's really cool is you've got Elastic Audio built into Pro Tools, and we'll look at that later, but you can use this feature in the Workspace browser to audition loops at the tempo of your song. So if you have this unchecked, these loops could be at any tempo. So let's see. But what I want to do is, these loops may not line up with my given audio because I'm in a specific tempo in Pro Tools. So I want to be able to audition them right alongside my audio and make sure they are at the exact same tempo. And to do that, make sure this is checked. Right to the right of it, you've got some different algorithms depending on what you're auditioning. If you're going to audition loops, keep this on rhythmic. If you're going to audition any other audio, you might as well choose polyphonic. And that's going to just compress it at the right algorithm. And now when I listen, that's going to ensure that these loops line up with my session. So let's come back in here to Pro Tools in the edit window. And what I want to do is select this, go into loop play mode. So right click and choose loop. And I'm just going to press play in Pro Tools, head over to my Workspace browser and start auditioning some loops. you get an idea of some of the loops in there, you can come back up here to the workspace and say, let's say I want to use this Pop Drums B1. You can simply drag that right over to the edit window in a blank spot at the bottom. And what it's going to do, it's going to drop that region right into Pro Tools, create a track for you, and it's already set for your tempo. And close out of this. Now this loop, remember, was basically 110 is the tempo, but Pro Tools has already moved it to be exactly a 2-bar loop at my tempo. Let's take a listen. Beautiful thing. It's lined up perfectly. It's right where I need it to be, and I didn't even have to do any importing. That's the fastest and easiest way to get audio into your session. Find it on your hard drive through the Workspace browser and drag it in. Now, I like the Workspace browser because you can audition and you can see multiple things easily, but you may already have audio that you know of or audio on a different drive and you don't need to go looking at it in the Workspace browser. Here's 2 ways to do it just from Pro Tools in the actual window. You can come up to File, choose Import, Audio, and then go find it wherever it is. So in this case, Big Fish loops, pop rock, drums, 110 to 119. You can audition it here. You can hear that slower tempo. And again, you don't have the flexibility to tweak the tempo here, but at least I could see it and I could click convert and done. And it's going to say, where do you want to save it? I want to save it to the audio files of my session. Those are all the audio you see in my region bin. Click open. And then you're going to get some options. You want it to come into a new track or the region list. Now, new track is beautiful. It's going to do the same thing that dragging that region did. It's going to go ahead and create it for you, which is usually what you want. You can choose have it start at the session start, or if you've already selected where you want the loop to be. So Pro Tools gives you some flexibility. Or you can choose region list. That's another option. And you can see it popped up right there. I know it's the same thing, but that allows you then to drag that loop right in. All right, makes sense? So that's importing audio in Pro Tools. If you see an audio file, click it and just drag it into the edit window and it's going to work. Or you can also do it from the file menu and be very specific. And that's helpful if you have multiple files you want to import in, say from a different session. But importing audio is how you're going to blend, obviously, loops that you have on an external drive, or if you liked someone's recording and they do a vocal or they do a part of in another session and they send it to you on the web, you can import it into your session if you're collaborating over the web. Very, very helpful. You need to know how to import audio. And at this point, you pretty much have mastered the basics of recording in Pro Tools. Arming tracks, routing things, using and understanding the region bin, understanding that your audio is never gone. You can always drag it back. You can always audition with Option or Alt click. You have access to everything. Pro Tools edit window is simply the map that you edit and show what you want Pro Tools to do with these audio files once you've recorded them or imported them. But these are the building blocks for your song. All right? Well, stick around for the next video. We're going to go into recording with MIDI and virtual instruments, and we'll add some of those to the song. Take care.